morning and welcome to our Chamber Legislative Update. I am Dave Roberts. I'm a past board chair here at the Chamber. I'm filling in for our Advocacy Chair, Mr. Bardero. Before we get started this morning, I'll hand it over to Candy. She's going to share some remarks.
So I'd like for everybody to bow their heads, and we'll just have a special prayer this morning for Senator Bowen and his family. Senator Bowen was always a big advocate and never missed one of these, and he's sorely missed today. So if you bow your head. God, we ask you today, we want to thank you first for this beautiful weather, for all the friendships that have come together here today to row in the same direction for this great community and this great Commonwealth of Kentucky. We'd like to say a special prayer today for Joe Bowen and his family. We ask that your healing grace touch their family and touch Joe as he struggles to get to the finish line and come back to us here in Owensboro and be amongst us at this next one. Please give us your miracle of healing and grace and courage to face what comes ahead. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you for that, Candy. And we certainly will keep Senator Bowen in our hearts and our thoughts and our prayers as he endures his fight. So we're here. This is the first time, I don't know, since maybe pre-pandemic. I think we had one canceled in March of 2020. So we're gathering in person, and so appreciate the opportunity to be here. With our legislators here, we know it's a busy time for you guys as well. A lot of moving and shaking and going on in Frankfurt, and with you guys being generous with your time this morning to meet with us as a chamber organization, we're very grateful for that and grateful for your time there. We're going to kind of frame this out. We're going to try to keep this to an hour, and just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you need the restroom, if you don't know, you can go out these doors, back around the hall to the left, so kind of two lefts and you're there as it relates to that. We also have some pre-submitted questions that we'll bring forward that we've collected as a chamber organization. And there will be an opportunity. You have some note cards sitting there at your chairs, and you can at any time fill those out and submit those. Candy and the team will collect those, and we'll try to work those in. But we want to be mindful of everyone's time this morning and to make this fruitful. Chamber members, thank you for being here. When we talk about the value of a chamber membership, not sat on that board and been a member, you say, well, what is it? Well, this is one of the reasons. It's advocacy. It's the fact that, we can talk directly with our local delegation here at the state level, at the federal level, at the local level, to bring issues forward and hopefully initiate, positive change for our community and our interests. So we thank you for that. Thank you to OCTC, Rodney Duke, for filming this. It will be accessible on the YouTube channel for access later. So we appreciate that. So to kick this thing off, I thought it would make sense just a couple of minutes each in your own words, some recap on where we're at today. How things are going in Frankfurt, what's in your purview, and maybe you can share that with the delegation. And maybe we'll start at the far side. DJ, you care to kick us off?
What? I get to go first for once?
There you go. Lead off.
Glad to. So we are in about day 40, I think. Is that about right? Somewhere in there. And we've had, I think, a very, very effective session so far. The proof in the pudding is the last few days when we get the Senate and the House to start concurring on different things. And we're kind of at that point now where we're trading bills. I will just talk very briefly on a couple of the bills that I'm doing. I'm doing the judicial redistricting bill that would, should it go through as it's written now, get us a second family court judge, and we might talk about that later, but that's just one of the bills I'm working on. I'm doing a bill that will help GED candidates at the high school level, and I've got some other ones that I'm doing, but those are probably the two that would impact locally more than anything else, so I'm excited about that. We're going to be talking about these, but we've got tax modernization is now in place. We've got some very exciting things about healthcare, training and workforce development that we'll be talking about. And I don't want to take all the thunder, but we just have some innovative, groundbreaking legislation coming through this year. And I am very excited about that. That's why I ran for office, was to have the opportunity to improve the life of Kentuckians. And that's what we're doing in this session. So I'll just open with that and we'll get into more details later.
Very good. I know it seems like a long time ago that we talked about redistricting. So that was the first week of session that we worked on the redistricting. The next week we did drop a budget in the House. That's kind of unprecedented, the way that it has worked in the past. Usually we start working on the budget at that point in time. We took a different role through our A&R chair of starting immediately after the session last year to start working on the budget and have that budget ready to go to get it to the House quicker. This is my plea for the Senate to send it back to us as soon as possible. So we've been waiting to get that by. We were very pleased to get a budget out early as a working product, and there's been very few pitfalls in it. We've had very good support. I know we've got several educators in the room. I think that they were overall pleased with the money that's been invested in a lot of different categories, and higher ed for that matter. That's been something that we've kind of slacked off the last couple of years, trying to kind of catch up with a lot of other things going on. Some of the other items that within the last couple of weeks, unemployment. I know that several of you, all unemployment insurance has been a big battle, and we are working on trying to get that to a better place in the state so that we're better prepared for an event of what has happened previously or any type of economic downturn, that we're ready and able to take care of that in a better situation than we had before. So that's going to be a complete new revamp of the unemployment system and a lot of that. As far as the state workers, we've asked the governor's office for help in coming up with a model on how we actually set up the pay scales and have a very good personnel situation so that our social workers and everyone like that is been in a really poor situation for quite a while. So that was one of the other items. Tax reform is fresh out of the House yesterday. So I don't know if several of you all are aware of that, but tax reform, working our way towards a zero state income tax, personal income tax. And that is a goal that we've got in mind. That's something we've been working on a little bit. I know that you've heard Senator Matt Castlen say it many times, consumption-based tax is the direction that we're trying to go. So with that, come January of 23, we'll start working towards that of being to take the personal income tax to 4%. We do have triggers in place based upon the revenues that'll come in to kind of work towards that. Some of the other items that are out there, I know locally, the Pritchard Committee's been working diligently with several partners, and I know several of those partners are in the room, coming up with a plan for child care. That has been one of the biggest barriers involved with unemployment and a lot of other things. And then my shiny object is compliments of the community college and Owensboro Health of working towards coming up with a center here in Owensboro to start training people on the healthcare shortage of the workforce. So I appreciate them bringing that to us, and we're hopeful that with the help of the Senate, we can get that in there and get that going so that we can kind of be a mecca for kind of a place that all the different groups, and that's not just Owensboro Community College. I think we have 8 higher eds, 9 now that Murray called and said, please let us join in with you. So just trying to make sure that we have kind of collaborative effort so that we can start training people in a more responsible, rather than everyone having their own lane, so to speak, that we all help each other to make sure that all of you all have the best product in healthcare out there. So, and I'll pass it on to Matt.
Sure. Well, I'm glad to be here this morning. Man, it feels like forever since we've sat up here and done this. I was just kind of go back and see when that was, but it has been a very, very busy session. But it's been a good one so far. I don't think there's been a time in the history of our state that I've been alive anyways, that we've had the surplus of tax dollars out there that we talk about. So many times it's, who do you cut to fund this, and how do you fund this without cutting this person? And you're trying to balance it all. And this year we do have an extra surplus of money, and so I think you'll see over the next 2 or 3, 4 weeks the conference committees get together and start debating how is the best and appropriate way to do that. I serve on the A&R budget, and we have been meeting every night till late, most of the time till 10 o'clock. You can probably see the red in my eyes. I got home late last night, and so we talk about all the other bills, and I tell you, when you start going through a 14-point-something billion budget, and then you add the federal funds, and you add ARPA, and you add infrastructure funds down, it begin to maybe fry your brain a little bit. But we're excited about our plan that we're probably going to be unfolding here in the next week. I think there's a lot of good synergies between what the House sent us and what we're going to have. Like always, there's going to be differences. Sometimes a matter of policy and the view of how we see it versus them is there, but that's the beauty of the conference committee. They can come together and hash those things out. I've been working hard to try to help with Suzanne's initiative here, working with our Western Kentucky Innovation Healthcare Centers. Hopefully next week with some success, we'll be able to talk more about that and how to keep pushing that forward so that she'll have what she needs to get her bill passed and change the direction of healthcare here in our community. I serve on the Agriculture Committee, and so many times, the things that happen there don't ever make the headline or the newspaper, but some of the most impactful things that we see in our area that we deal with on a daily basis. And one of the big things that we're working through now is this solar energy. We're seeing solar panels become a very popular thing, and things that residents are using. You're seeing the bigger farms start to go in, provide energy, and so we're working on a framework of how do you regulate them? How do you guarantee in 20 years that somebody's going to be liable for cleaning them up when it comes time? And how do we protect the adjoining property owners from somebody who feels they're important possibly in their area? And I know especially around here when it comes to farmland, we have a lot of the farmers that are concerned about agriculture land going into these solar farms and being paid the leases that they're being paid. And so Senator Hornback and myself are trying to work through that. I know Representative Branscombe in the House has a bill real similar, and I think him and Hornback are trying to come to a mutual understanding and agreement to get something passed forward there. Workforce things. I say this all the time when I'm in Frankfort. There's never been a better time to get out of bed in Kentucky and go to work. The working men and women of Kentucky are a dying breed, and the opportunities are endless out there. But for employers, it's a struggle to find help to fill the positions. And as we do things, as change our tax structure, and as we do things to attract more businesses and even organic growth amongst our businesses that we have here, the people are the resources that are the most difficult to find at this time to fill those positions. And so that's a great need that we're working towards. But I look forward to getting this budget out, hopefully in the next week, so that the conversations can start and we can go from there.
Monday would be good. Monday would be good.
Thank you for that. Majority Senator Miles and Representative Johnson, appreciate those comments. Move into the pre-submitted question portion of this. I've got a few of these here, and let's start with Majority Caucus Leader Miles. You brought up tax reform, House Bill 8. Can you tell us about the sales tax added services and thoughts on that?
I can. The way that it has been set up, in 2018, we started working toward that direction of trying to work towards a consumption-based tax and start lowering, and we did at that point. We started broadening the base of what could be taxed. At that point in time, the decision was made to start looking at some of the services that may already have a taxable source, whether it be lawn care, whatever it may be, to start adding a tax on that. And so it would be a consumption-based tax. So basically, you got a tax break on your personal income, but you were paying tax on things that you actually went out and chose, to do. And so 2018 came to 2020, we were projected with record numbers at that point in time. We were very pleased of how we were starting to work that direction. And as all of you know, the pandemic came, and so that kind of stalled us a little bit of where we where we were going to be at. So not really on the numbers economically, but as far as the plans of what do we do next. So at that point in time, it just kind of became start working towards where we go from there. Whenever I know the A&R chair, the question would come up, how did you choose the services that you chose and things like that? They started trying to go through some of the items that may be choices that people make, not necessarily necessities, but choices that people make, and start adding the tax there and start taking down the personal income tax. And so some of those choices, I think different services that were included in that. Just want to say it out loud to remind you all, it does not tax groceries, and it does not tax your electric bill on your personal home that you live in. So that's one item that we want to make sure, because I know in the past, the co-ops get kind of an inkling that something like that might happen, and then we get bombarded with 1,001, 10,001. How many emails do we get on that? So if you have a second home, it will be a tax on that electric bill as far as that goes. So be aware of that, but it would not be on your personal residence, and I think they call it your domicile, wherever your actual address is. And so hopefully that will be kind of the two items. Wanted to make sure that that was clear. We are not taxing groceries, and we are not taxing also medication. That was another item that people are concerned that may be a possibility. As far as some of the things that may be taxed, could possibly be elective surgeries, anything that would be elective, whether it be implants, enhancements, tattoos, piercings, things like that was some of the items. There's a complete list in the bill of the items that were added. And part of that came from the chairman and vice chairman of that committee start working through what do we not tax as far as that goes. So that's where it's kind of to start broadening the base on those, was that directly. Additional item that's included in this is the batteries for electric vehicles. That was something that was kind of added into it to make sure that we were prepared for what's next in the batteries and things like that. There's also a reclamation fee in there so that we plan ahead, because once these batteries start happening in vehicles, we're going to have to figure out a way how you dispose of them after the fact. So that was another item. Also in this bill, tax amnesty. If you have a tax bill out there and you want to get that paid off, we're working towards trying to make sure that we get that, give you the opportunity to get that paid off without a penalty and move forward. So tax amnesty was also on that, which I think was very important. But there are several services that are included in there. There's a lengthy list. Advertising originally was in the bill whenever it came out. And I will say the reason that part of that came out was based upon across state lines of not really knowing how you could actually tax something that was outside of our domain of where we were. So just to kind of give you a little bit of the work in progress as far as where we came to on that. But it is a very lengthy bill. We are very excited about it. We're very hopeful that this will be very progressive of planning for the future. And that, I think, was the most excitement from people, that it wasn't like it just affected at this point in time. It was, this is our plan in place for, hopefully, if everything goes well with revenues and the triggers and things like that, to get us there. You know, we could actually be at zero base within 6 years. Kind of put that in perspective. And that opens the door for encouraging people to move into our state. So if people are looking for places that they do not have to pay tax on their personal income. So that was part of that.
And one follow-up to that, we kind of heard this, a few minutes ago. Obviously the House is kind of advanced and down the road as it relates to, tax reform and revenue. Senate, Senator Castlen touched on this. You said Monday. He said hopefully later this week. I think the only thing that's kind of been brought up there is a flat tax rebate at this point. How do you see this being blended and on your side from there?
So you're probably talking about Senate Bill 194, where we did the refund. Is that what you're talking about? So So, and that's kind of a totally separate mechanism. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to the House, because a modernization of the tax plan cannot start in the Senate. It starts in the House. And so getting it to us this early, gives our 38 people a chance now to have their input on it as well, because I do think that the appetite for tax reform is in Kentucky. How it looks is that argument can be made. So, but to talk about the tax refund, we talk about the surplus of money. We have about an extra $1.9 billion on top of doing the increases and doing all the things that everybody's wanting, pay increases, all those kind of things. On top of all of that of money out there, we got the House's budget the first week. There's good and bad to that. The good thing is we got plenty of time to work on it. The bad thing is sometimes there's monies that are coming in that they particularly didn't know about, and this and that. So we happen to be the branch that has received all the calls now and have received all the meetings to try to put these things in there. But when we started balancing our budget and we realized that there's that kind of money, and you talk about essential workers, how do you start picking and choosing winners, who's essential and who isn't? This is what I say. When you get out of bed in the morning during this pandemic that we all experienced, and you went to work, you were essential. You're part of what made the economy go round. And we felt that if you were a tax-paying citizen of Kentucky, that everybody deserved to be considered an essential worker, and so we give this money back out. So how it works, we put a $500 maximum on it. The reason we put a $500 maximum on it is we wanted it to make sure that it went to the people who needed the help the most. It's $1,000 per family, and then people say, well, what if you didn't pay that below? So if you didn't pay $500 in state income tax, you got the equivalent of what you paid in. If you paid over $500, that was the limit there is. And so that was just our idea of saying thank you to the Kentucky worker for everything they did during the pandemic. We don't need this money. We have more than we need. We're giving it back to you. It belongs to you. It doesn't belong to the government.
Thank you for that. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. We have, I think related to this, a question that's come in from the audience here that's in this vein. And I know we talked about Senator Bowen earlier, and I know this was near and dear to his heart. The question is, has the state used this once-in-a-lifetime revenue opportunity to address the poorly funded pension funds? And there, we can start.
We'll both hit that if you want to. So we just went through the education portion of the budget, and in the pensions alone, we'll talk about healthcare for just a minute, and we'll talk about education as a whole, and the amount of money in the state budget that it's receiving, and we are still putting way over the ARC payment, over $1 billion per time into this fund to fund the pensions. And so, and that's something that we've continued to do since 2016, Suzanne, and have done that every single year and are going to continue to do it this year. The House had it in their budget, and we are going to have it in ours.
Anything to add?
I'll just add, I want to reiterate that we have been fully funding the pension fund since 2016. I think that's an important point. And the reason that's important is because we have seen in the last few years a major growth in the market for the most part. And if we had not fully funded early on in 2016, then we wouldn't have had any resources to take advantage of that. So the funds are looking better now by far than they have in decades, I would say. And a lot of that is because we did what we needed to do in 2016, and we're going to continue to do that. So they look anemic still. They are still anemic, but we have the right philosophy on this. And that's it. Come what may, we're going to do what we have to do to make sure we properly fund them, not just legally, but properly fund them to make sure that they're solvent for decades to come. And I think we're doing that.
It's about $1 billion over.
And I think additional to that, we have to be very careful as far as the money that's coming from the federal throughout the pandemic money, that what we can and cannot use that money for. So we've had to be very cautious to make sure that we comply with what those rules have been. And those rules have changed actually from whenever they originally came out until the final rolling on. And Brenda's laughing at me because she knows it's a moving target right now, what you can and cannot use those funds for. So that has been part of the issue as far as that goes. But also, if you look at our ratings have gone, I believe that they rated us originally as stable at one point, and now we're on the positive. You know, that is good for everything that you all do. That's everything, good for everything the state does, for our actual financial, economic health of our state to be in a better situation than we were. And a lot from us paying our bills, to be quite honest. So I think that's.
I just had one more thing about that. As far as the federal money goes, there's so much federal money coming in that the tendency is no matter what the issue is, well, let's put federal money on it. And if we do that, if we're not very careful, as Representative Miles said, is that we will think that we have federal money for something and spend that money and then find out we're not getting that federal money and we have created a problem. So we are trying the very best we can to be very careful about how we use that so that we don't create, 2 years from now, a massive problem. So when you come to us and say, can we use the federal money for this? Our answer is probably going to be, don't know yet. I'm not going to say yes. We got to find out. And that's why.
And a reminder, all the federal money and state money that comes back to these are taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
So want to remind everyone that they are your dollars that are coming back and being spent on different things. So.
Very good. No, thank you guys for that. I've got another one that came from the audience here, and I'll just read it out loud here. Jails in particular in the judicial system, as a result of the inmates, will cost Davis County taxpayers over $4.5 million next year. Any relief in sight?
Thank you, Judge.
It was an anonymous person that wasn't the game. That's a judge.
Somebody named not Judge, not named Judge.
Well, I mean, the jails have been a drain on many communities. I think we only have 3 jails in the state of Kentucky that are working in the black, if I'm not mistaken. And most of that's based on federal inmates, is how they've actually been able to stay out of the hole, so to speak. I do think that there is work on jail reform. Representative Michael Meredith has kind of been at the forefront of that and working towards that. And he's had multiple items that have come up that he's been working on, along with, I know that the amendment to bring more money options to local control, home rule. He's worked diligently on that, but he's also worked a lot on jail reform and where we need to go with that. And so I do think that there is an appetite for doing something with that, but quite frankly, we've had some pretty large lifts since we've been in over these first 40 days. We have really had some pretty major lifts. Each week we've had a major category that hasn't been touched for quite a while. So I do foresee something happening with the jails as far as the conversations of the funding on that. As far as what that is, I haven't seen that personally.
I'll take a short hit at it, and Judge, it goes even broader than even just the jails when it comes to some of this relief that several organizations have gotten from our medical institutions to our jails to all these different ones that have increased pay and stipends due to the cost of COVID and all those kind of things. And so there comes a point to where, we can continue to do that, but that money's no longer coming down from the feds. And so how do you start to stair step off of that? And so there is a plan in place to help with what you're talking about on our side, but how long term, I can't answer that question today, but the short answer is yes, there is some short-term help.
Very good. I'm going to switch and go back to some pre-submitted questions. And this one surrounds family court. And, I know Representative Johnson, about a year ago, you had done some heavy lifting bringing the family court judge bill across the line. It ended up getting bogged down in the Senate. Last Monday, the House voted to pass the bill. And certainly from a chamber standpoint, we thank you guys for your support on that. And I'll start with you, Representative Johnson. What do you think is going to happen when it gets to the Senate this year?
I'm cautiously optimistic. That's the phrase I used last time, and that didn't turn out so well, so I'm not sure that's a good phrase. But sometimes we just have to build up momentum for issues. And I'm going to go into a little more depth as far as just that question. You may have to re-ask it. But so last year when I filed the bill that I did, it was simply for Davis County. It was for the 6th Judicial Circuit. And as I have become more educated about the issue statewide, I realized that it's not just Davis County, that there is a need for a statewide, I don't want to use the word fix, but just a reorganization, I think is the right term. So the bill that I filed this year has 18 different actions in it that covers across the state. It covers 32 counties, 18 districts. It impacts about 2 million of Kentucky's 4.5 million people. And it has 9 additions, including the Davis County one, and 9 deletions, which makes it very difficult because we're actually asking a district to give up a judge so that we can rebalance to the districts that need another judge. So that's a very difficult lift. We've gotten it through the House, and in fact, it passed 73-23. I was excited about that. It is with the Senate, and I want to thank Senator Castlen because he has agreed to carry the bill in the Senate. And when you have a champion in the Senate for a House bill, the odds of it getting passed go up astronomically. But it is still a heavy lift. I'm just not going to candy coat it. Senator Castlen may or may not have any additional information as far as what's going on in the Senate at this time. I just know that we've got a bill that answers a lot of questions across the state, and that usually is something that people look seriously at, and so I think that's helpful.
I'll take just a few minutes and talk about it, and since you kind of opened it up with last year's bill, and DJ knows this, and we've had long conversations because sometimes it's hard to get your message out because there's so many working components that go on in Frankfort, and so actually it did pass the Senate and it died in the House on concurrence. Coming back,
amended. I got to throw that in there.
Yeah, amended, and that's exactly right. I mean, that's what happens to these things, and DJ will talk about this. I mean, when you go in front of all the members, we have judicial issues all over this state. We have judges being overworked and too many caseloads, and when Davis County was coming down the pipe, then all of a sudden you've got somebody over here in Laurel County that's saying, well, I've got a problem, and then Scott County, I've got a problem, and so this bill that DJ has is a comprehensive approach, still not on a super large scale, but to help the immediate problem. And so, him and I had some conversations long before session. I agreed to carry it when he got it out of the House. And, when we get this budget out, hopefully soon, then that'll be my next priority, is to try to get that through so that Davis County can have a second family court judge.
Senator Castlen, just a step further on that, and kind of contrasting what you touched on from last year to this year, is there any sense of optimism that, that will not be amended in the Senate and it will be taken in its form? And if you're reading some tea leaves here.
Yeah, so I can't guarantee it because I think when you talk about solar panels, judges, and funding, those might be the 3 hottest topics in that town that seem to spark a lot of interest for some reason. And so I can't guarantee that it won't be amended because there's liable to be a member that maybe has an issue that maybe not be on that list. But it's our goal to try to get it out for the benefit of our community.
I'd like to talk to just the amendment process very briefly. And that particular bill has room for change. It has room for amendments. The bill I did last year was 1 judge, 1 action, and then when you added 4 additional actions on top of that, that was a massive change compared to the original bill. That was a lot to come back to the House and for the House to swallow and understand and deal with in the last few days. This one is a much broader bill, so it has more room for, let's call it, improvements. And so if it should change somewhat and come back to us, as long as it's not massive, then we've got a pretty good opportunity. I can't make promises, but we've got a pretty good opportunity that if they're reasonable changes, we're going to go along with them. That was difficult last year. I don't think it'll be the same way this year.
And Suzanne will know what I'm talking about when I say this too. These measures aren't always cheap. There's a significant cost when you start adding people to the bench. That's what I was going to ask DJ.
Yeah. So I'm going to go in a little bit more detail than on this, just to explain the cost. So there are 18 changes I want to make. 9 of them add judges, 9 of them remove judges from places where they're just not as worked. The additions will take place effective January 2023. So if this bill passes, there will be a filing deadline in August for anyone that wants to run for these positions. And they will be elected in November, take effect in January of next year. The deletions are scheduled to take place in January of 2027, and we did that for several reasons. One is for the communities to prepare for that. Another is out of a courtesy to the current judges that are there. We didn't want to, basically take their position away in the middle of their terms. So a lot of these terms come to a conclusion in 27, and that gives them the time, community and individuals, to prepare for that. So that's kind of an explanation of how the mechanics are for the bill, which leads to the cost. And currently the cost would be, for the next 3 years, it's an additional $3 million, because family court judges, let me back up. The additions are almost all family court judges. The deletions are almost all circuit judges. And family court judges are much more expensive than the circuit judges, simply because the judge themselves gets paid a little extra because there's more involved. There's additional staff and there's additional cost. So having said all that, for the 3 years between the adds and the deletions, the additional cost to the general fund is $3 million a year. Yeah, I said that right. And then after 2027, when the deletions take place, that cuts down to what was 3 is now $1.5 million. So there, and that's significant. That's right out of the general fund. And someplace else who thought they were going to get money suffers because of that. But across this state, and particularly here in Davis County, the family court judge it's become obvious that we need those. It's just a fact. And it's becoming more obvious as we go forward. So, yes, we have an additional cost. Sometimes we have to pay for those things, and that's what this is.
Thank you guys for that. I appreciate it. Switching gears a little bit to education. This, again, a submission from the audience here. State-funded full-day kindergarten was one of the community's top legislative priorities this session. State-funded full-day kindergarten was included in the House budget. Thank you to our House members. Will the State Senate also include state funding for full-day kindergarten in their budget proposal? Senator Castlen, do you want to take that?
Matthew, do you ask that probably?
It was not him.
Is Matt Robbins here anywhere? Where are you?
Please, oh please.
We have not finalized our budget process yet. Again, we got the houses pretty early, and so there was a lot of things that are on there yet, so I can't answer that yet because I'm only one of 38 members, and so we haven't approved our budget yet.
Very good. Let's talk a little bit about, again, pre-submitted question here, employee child care assistant partnership. Representative Hebron introduced legislation that would allow public-private partnerships for child care assistance. Can you explain how this would work, and does it look like this may actually happen? You want to take that, Suzanne?
I will. I think it became evident, and I know here locally and everywhere else, the child care issue was one of the main things that came up, especially during the pandemic. People may have an ability a job that they needed to go to work to, but with the child care situation, there's a lot of stipulations. I will say, as far as aside from this bill specific, a lot of the conversations have been the difference how the education systems, K through 12, are treated compared to child care. There's different regulations. We even had one of our members said, I have a list of food that I can provide for my child to send to school with them for daycare that have restrictions, but when they got to kindergarten, they didn't have those same restrictions. And so there's a lot of items with child care, and I think that we found that out whenever we were doing the repeated conversations through the Pritchard Committee with that pilot project. We find out that there's a lot of differences between the way the child care world is treated and the way that K through 12 public education is treated. So those are some of the items we need to focus on and kind of adjust to make sure that the child care is not burdened with things that may not be a benefit to the health and safety and education of that child. That is part of the item for that. specifically, as far as the bill that's out there, there is a price tag on that, as far as the expense of that. But it would be kind of like the conversations that we had talked about here in Davis County with a lot of the working groups, very specific on, we need to pair somehow the employer, whether that be a benefit to the employee of part of their package, whatever that may be, so that the employer could possibly pay for slots with a daycare so that they actually are even on the schedules. That's another item, and I know several of you all may know people that work shift work and different things like that. They may not have a childcare situation where they could work a shift work because they don't have childcare. And so it's kind of, and I think especially in the female workforce, we keep saying that we want to enable females to go back to work. Well, typically, I'm not going to say in every case, but typically, the female is responsible for the child care and making sure that's taken care of in the household. So hopefully this will be an opportunity. We've tried to be very cautious, especially with the tax reform, of not adding on additional expenses, because the quicker that we get to zero personal income tax, but we also need to recognize we have needs that need to be taken care of immediately. So I do think it has several co-sponsors on that. It has a very positive response, but also we're going to have to make sure that we figure out a way how to fund that, because that is a match between the state and the employer to make sure that they can hold those slots and make sure those slots are available for children to be in child care. So I do think that, I know the Pritchard Committee has endorsed that, but they also have been working very closely on working on the different outcomes in our community on that pilot program. So I'm very anxious to see, hopefully, between the combination of those two items, between the pilot project here and at the state level on child care, I'm looking forward to seeing us be in a very sweet spot as far as Davis County's specialists in child care situation to make sure, because that would be an enhancement to encourage people to move here if they knew for sure that they were going to be able to have safe, healthy, educational childcare locally, and also employment. So that opens the door for you all to be in a better situation to hire people.
So and Suzanne and DJ, I want to mention this because I don't even know if you all were made aware of this, or you might have been. And this happened to be one of those things where we asked the cabinet in Senate A&R to come present to us with some of these federal funds that were coming down. And the first time that we were notified in Senate A&R of over $1 billion of federal money to be sent towards state certified child care. $1 billion. Normally through these processes, any type of appropriation like that would have to go through the Appropriations Committee, where this is a federal injection of cash allocated for child care. The cabinet is going to be the ones writing those checks. And so that's going to be a major curveball for what Representative Havers wanting to do, because I think her approach was the right approach. And my fear is now that we're going to see major inflation in our child care now, because it's got to be spent in about 18 months. $1 billion spent in the state of Kentucky on child care. You do the math of how many available spots there are for state certified places, and it's like $200-something thousand per facility that they'd be receiving in a one-time grant. And so we see that as a concern because I think it's going to contradict what she's trying to do to bring a balance so people can have child care that's affordable, to be able to go to work. And then we're going to have this injection of cash over on the other side now. And so just to make the public aware, because I can tell you as the Senate A&R, we were not made aware of until the day of the meeting.
And I'll just, and I know I could be wrong, I think Senator Castlen will agree with me. The frustration with that, of funding coming in like that, that is not sustainable. Mm-hmm. So if they infuse that amount of money into some of these systems, and then you know what that's going to look like 18 months from now. They're going to come back to the state and go, well, we had, $200,000, we had whatever it may be. Now we need that from you all, and we don't have the sustainability. And that's why a lot of the items that we've discussed, on appropriations, we're trying to fuse one-time money in items to ignite things to be able to be sustainable to move forward. And that's been part of, I have Scott and Mark both shaking their head pretty heavy right now because I've made it very clear with them, the amount of money that I'm asking on this healthcare situation has been very specific. This is one-time money to help you all get started so that you all can flourish and you all can deliver what the Commonwealth needs as far as healthcare workers.
All right, got another one that came in. Did you have something, Matt?
No, we're getting tight on time, so we'll move on to another subject.
Very good. Another one that came before, and this is kind of paraphrased here. But update on where do we stand on charter school legislation? I'll just throw it out to the table.
Does DJ want to go?
I'll take it or you can
I think I'm going to let you take it because I've just started looking at that bill closely, so I don't know that I'm knowledgeable enough to really talk to the details on it yet.
That bill will be coming out, if it hasn't already, I know it's already been filed, as far as some of the details of it. It will be public charter schools. I'm saying that again, just so that you all understand, public charter schools. There will be several authorizers that will have the ability to authorize those in the communities. As far as the absolute final details of it, I don't have the specific details on it. I know Representative McCoy has spent a tremendous amount of time on this subject for quite a length of time. As far as the structure, the funding mechanism within our budget was already set up previously. I believe it was it 16?
17.
17 is whenever
First year.
We actually put that in there so that it was available and ready to go in the event that comes about. But it will be a public charter school. And I know they may disagree with me. I look at and we had a conversation earlier today. I want to make sure that whatever that legislation is, it does not affect the Innovation Academy here in Davis County in Owensboro, because it's been a phenomenal school and the things that have happened there. And it has just been it's public, but yet it also is a different mentality with facilitators compared to our traditional public schools. And I think that it's been quite a compliment to the children's opportunities and for parents for that matter. So I do think that we need to keep that in mind whenever it comes about. But that's the one thing I just want to make sure that it does not affect what we've already done here locally. And I know that was a specific waiver through the KDE is how that came about. They asked special permission for that to create that. And that was, that's on our locals. Our locals did a phenomenal job of coming up with that idea and working toward that. And I want to make sure that every county has that opportunity if we can possibly do that. So that is public charter schools and more details to come on that, and I don't know how much you know about that.
I'm not very versed on what the House is doing, but we can talk about education in a whole, the amount of money that has been flowing in for education as a whole. And I know we got some school board members here and stuff that can, speak intelligently about how much they've gotten. But, we're talking billions of dollars that have flown into the state of Kentucky through the feds to help our schools during COVID and the extended cost and things. And so, scholarship tax credits are something that that I would like to see for our community. We have great private schools here in our community, and I would love for that opportunity to be extended to not just the counties that we had last time, but all 120 counties across the state of Kentucky. And I know in the Senate there's several members that are very passionate about hopefully getting to a point that we can see a vote on that.
Thank you for that. As you touched on, Senator Castlen, we're running kind of towards the end here, and I've just got one, from a chamber perspective, a pre-submitted question, and really a community perspective. As you guys very well know, a great portion of our community priorities focus on infrastructure. The bipartisan infrastructure package that's being passed at the federal level. As this community and this region, we want to make sure that we have a seat at the table when we're getting there. Maybe you guys can give us an update on where we stand from an infrastructure standpoint and how.
So I'll talk a little bit about the infrastructure money because it had not come down for the House to be able to have it in its budget. And so we had the governor's recommendation, and so we just recently went through it. The different monies that come down. You all probably seen the announcement about the Brent Bridge in Cincinnati, which is a huge economic driver for Kentucky. I know it's a long ways from us, but I don't think you'll find anybody from Kentucky and Ohio and even the nation that doesn't think that's a great ideal. And so, those one-time funding mechanisms that are coming down, then matched with state dollars, really leverage us to have the ability to invest in our infrastructure. And I used to say this all the time. I feel like we're driving around on stuff that my granddad's generation built. And it is time that we pour into it. And because it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, if you're going to school or you're going to work, we drive on our highways and we use our infrastructure every day. And I think that's important. You'll see a bipartisan approach to this infrastructure. And so I know that it'll probably be in the conference committee of how to categorize it. But at the same time, all we do is put the money into the budgets. We don't necessarily line item those particular items, but I think you'll see certain items that are important to a lot of districts across Kentucky make it onto that list to invest in the future of our state.
I just add on that, for whatever influence I might have in this process, I'm going to encourage as much as possible to drive money down to the local levels, to the county and the city, because you guys know where the potholes are. We know that there needs to be money to fix the potholes. I have, in deference to a couple of people in the audience, asked the question about when we can repave South Frederica. It's scheduled. But I'm seriously, I'm trying to see if we can move that schedule up a little bit. But there's a pretty solid schedule in place on that. But again, my philosophy is there are things we need to do at the big picture level, at the state level. But as much as we can bring the money down to the local level and fix the things we need to fix, I think we're ahead on that.
And in terms on the question, what can we do as a community to make sure we get our fair share and get a seat at the table there? And maybe just you guys could comment on that.
I'll start. Owensboro's in a really good position. One of the only senators in this region that serves on A&R, and you've got a leader in House leadership in Suzanne. And so I feel like that our community is going to be in good shape when it comes to arguing and fighting over where these dollars are going to be spent.
On infrastructure especially.
Mm-hmm.
We are in a very good position. And locally, they've done a very good job of prioritizing and making sure that we're aware of that. So stayed in contact with us on the priorities. I've also begged for South Frederica to be repaved. So I know Larry was excited over that one, but
We should talk about that and see if we can maybe two angles maybe.
We've got two angles on that. But to me, the biggest surprise is whenever I made that call again on that during the pandemic, a lot of the workers, they used a lot of virtual items. And I said, virtual's just not going to be realistic whenever you drive out Frederica Street and in Frederica Street to know how that feels. So even if you have to drive a separate vehicle and follow me, I'm inviting them down and offered to pay for their lunch if they wanted to come down so that they could experience that rather than work it virtually. So.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, that concludes our time. And just on behalf of the chamber and our partners in the community, we know it's not easy to sit in front of the group. We know it's not easy to carve out the time on a Saturday morning, and we're grateful. I just know in my time working with each of you, you've always been accessible, you've always been responsive, and we've made an effort to speak with one voice in terms of community priorities and those type of things, and so we just appreciate your time and appreciate that.
I'll give a commercial for what's to come. On Tuesday, if all goes well, we'll have a presentation in the A&R House that'll be Scott Williams and Mark Marsh will be presenting along with some others on the project for the potential Workforce Innovation Center here for healthcare. So anxious to have them up this next week and see where we go with that. I believe that'll be for discussion only. So that's the commercial for that. And as far as the next big thing in the House, since we got tax reform done last week, welfare reform is next on the calendar. So just kind of stay tuned for that, and kind of pay attention to that. Welfare reform is our next item, and that is actually looking at the bridge. I know we talk about the cliff all the time. And so that's what they've been working on, is trying to figure out a way to bridge people from welfare to get them back in the workforce and make it where they don't fall off that cliff in between. So
I'm going to take it a different direction real quick. I just want to say thank you to the community for the opportunity to be able to serve the last 6 years. It's bittersweet sometimes to sit here and to speak at one of these for the last time, but it won't be the last one in my book. Hopefully it'll just be a book marker temporary, because I'm going to go home and raise my family. You know, I've got 11, 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and you know, Mother Teresa said, if you want to impact the world, go home and love your family. And I'm going to tell you, my goal is to raise God-fearing, God-loving, country-loving people. And you know, it's been a pleasure to serve. I've learned a lot. You meet all kinds of people from across the state and get very versed on it, but I couldn't do it without the support of this community. And I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be able to represent you all in the House and the Senate. So.
So I have to follow that. I'll just echo my thanks. You know, this is not something we have to carve our time out for. This is something we anticipate and look forward to, because we get to have conversations with you guys. And we get to go into a little bit of details about things. But more important, I reiterate, please feel free to contact us. You know, just because it's Saturday night, my phone's still on. I may not answer till Sunday or Monday, but typically I still answer Saturday night. You know, we work for you. We do. And if we don't know what's on your mind, we can't do what you want us to do. So thank you for the opportunity. This is a lifetime dream to be at this moment in this position with the opportunities we have as legislators, but we've got to hear from you. So ring the bell, ring the phone. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Again, on behalf of the